On governmentality. When one reads Foucault's later writings on government and biopolitics, one notes a certain shift in his thinking about the notion of power. It is true that in talking about governmentality and biopolitics, Foucault still insists that one needs to look for the historically specific rationalities associated with the practices that define different forms of government. But in this short lecture, I want to focus on the new elements that the analysis of government add to Foucault's thinking about power. For one, his studies of disciplinary power were restricted to specialized institutional contexts, while the notion of government is applied to larger strategic developments beyond the scope of his microphysics of power. So, it would be fair to say that Foucault switches his attention to domains such as the state that were traditionally regarded as objects of political theory. Another important fact about this shift is that now Foucault is able to offer a more detailed analysis of the notion of political resistance and of the practice thereof. Since according to Foucault, to govern is not to physically determine the conduct of passive subjects, but rather to offer reasons why those governed should do what they are told to do, this implies that they can also question these reasons. Foucault claims that this is why governmentality has historically developed in tandem with the practice of political critique. The practice of critique must question the reasons for governing, like the legitimate principles, procedures, and means of government. Next, I will offer a very short summary of Foucault's views of neoliberal governmentality, and then extract some general characteristics of the power exercised by government. In the lecture series The Birth of Biopolitics, Foucault engages in a lengthy examination of neoliberal governmentality as the main example of how the power of government operates. He analyzes neoliberalism as a historically novel form of governmentality, a rationality of governing connected with specific technologies of power. On Foucault's account, neoliberalism is not understood just as an economic doctrine, but as a governmental form that is directed towards specific objectives. It regulates itself through continuous reflection and, more importantly, aims to ensure that capitalism works. It comprises a coherent political ontology, a set of philosophical background beliefs about the nature of society, markets, and human beings. Foucault also puts emphasis on the fact that neoliberal government should be viewed as a particular way of producing subjects or constructing them. It produces or constructs an economic subject which has specific tendencies, preferences, and motivations. So, neoliberal governmentality aims to create the social conditions that not only encourage and necessitate competitiveness and self-interest, but also produce them. Neoliberal subjects on this analysis must make long-term and short-term investments in different aspects of their lives and acquire sufficient economic knowledge to be able to calculate costs, risk, and possible returns on the capital invested. This is the type of agents that neoliberal government, this form of power, creates. More generally, Foucault argues that one can distinguish certain characteristics of governmentality that show the continuity between this form of power and other forms of power, such as disciplinary power. So Foucault says that while government historically referred to a wide range of practices, from religious guidance of the soul to ruling over a territory and its inhabitants, in the context of the modern state, it has come to mean governing a population. Now, a population as the object of modern forms of government both required and encouraged the development of specific forms of knowledge, such as statistical analysis or macroeconomic and bioscientific knowledge. The modern state had to take care of the life and well-being of its population, so this is the reason why Foucault calls the politics of the modern state biopolitics, because it also focuses on exercising power over the lives of the individuals that it governs. According to Foucault, modern governmental rationality has two main features. On the one hand, the development of the modern state is characterized by the centralization of political power. A centralized state with highly organized administration and bureaucracy has emerged in modern times. On the other hand, the modern state is also characterized by pastoral power or individualizing power. This is power that relies on individualizing knowledge about a person's lives. What does this mean? The modern state requires the development of power technology oriented towards individuals in an attempt to govern their conduct in a continuous and permanent way. The result is the intervention of the state in the everyday life of individuals, for example, in aspects such as those concerning their diet, their mental health, and sexual practices. With respect to the conceptual pair of power and freedom, which is at the heart of political philosophy, Foucault's gambit was that one should refuse to define and advance all the forms that freedom and power could possibly take. This means refusing to latch on to static definitions of either the concepts of freedom or power. So only by analyzing power in its multiplicity, Foucault claimed, do we have a chance to discover a multiplicity of freedoms that would counter all the different ways in which power comes to define the limits of who we can be.